You're in the right place at the right time. You're on the moral compass. We're here with the alpha male lone wolf, Lothario Vanish, and Dan Mack in the house tonight, guys. We got a good show for you. The title of the show is The Friendly Terrorist. So give us 1 second and we'll be right back. Welcome once again to the show tonight. You know, 4 people tuning in. Glad to have you out there. Hope you'll be hearing from you. The name of the show tonight is The Friendly Terrorist. And uh, we have with us tonight Lothario Vanish, Alpha Male Lone Wolf. And we have Dan Mack with us tonight. Lothario Vanish is usually known as the mayor of Steel City, but he said he put that on pause for a little bit. So I just, yeah, every now and then I'll reach over here and just a little while, but I gotta hang it up too. But still diehard Dallas. But the storming tonight's show is about the storming of the United States Capitol. There was a riot and a violent attack against the 117th United States Congress on January 6, 2021, carried out by a mob of supporters of U.S. President Donald Trump in an attempt to overturn his defeat in the 2020 presidential election on American soil. On American soil. My cousin Cheryl Morrison is tuning in. She says, interesting subject. All right, Cheryl. So we hope to hear from you tonight, Cheryl. Any question you may have for these gentlemen ready now. I'm telling you now, the Navy SEALs, you only see 2 of them, the Navy SEALs now. So our first question tonight, and this is going to be for Dan Mack and get ready to call you out and Lothario Vanish.
You had it right. You had it right.
It's for Lothario Vanish and Dan Mack. President Trump encouraged his supporters to come to Washington for the Save America March. The same day, Congress would be convened to declare Joseph R. Biden ceremonially the 46th president of the United States. He told his followers, big protest in D.C. on January 6th. He tweeted a week before Christmas, be there and it will be wild. In your opinion, do you think that this was incendiary? Was he in fact inciting a riot?
You want to take this one or you want me to go first on this?
Go ahead. Okay, Dan.
So,
go first.
Now, so here's the thing. Ultimately, it was intentional, but here's the crazy thing about it. The whole time with Trump, I don't like to mention his name because he gets too much credit. He's a good salesman, but other than that, he's not that intelligent. Because the thing is, what he is he knows how to be a mouthpiece for people, say things that they like to hear, and then he rides that wave of popularity that goes along with it. That's, if people remember in the 90s when the Clintons were the hot political couple, he was around them all the time. He was around Democrats. And then when things change, looking for a new voice, he goes to Twitter, starts doing Apprentice. People start getting angry. He starts to feel that. Then he just starts to mirror it. So the thing is he some mastermind like a Mussolini or that calculating? No. That's why he's able to be played a puppet like Putin. Putin is a true danger in that sense where he's calculating enough in the things that he does and when he tests national waters and all other things that he's responsible for. But someone like Trump is just a mouthpiece, and that's why he spent more time on Twitter than doing his job in the actual office. And did he know these things would happen? Ultimately, I'm not worried about him, but the movement, the people who went there knew exactly what they were doing. and they were, there was a lot of people who's hoping that it would have that type of furor to carry over, and then they would actually do that. I mean, you don't have that plan unless you're going in there with all the gear and equipment and militia moves, moving in segments throughout there, knowing where people are located, even though these are private halls. So there's some inside work going on. So ultimately, they'll put this at the feet of Trump, but I don't like to pay that much attention to him because Trump is nothing but a spokesperson for something that's been underlying in our country for a long time.
Thank you, Dan Mack. And before we get to you, Lothario, Alexis Smalls is out there, and she says hello. We say hello back to you, Alexis Smalls, and Junior Duncan, who is just a comedian, because you're on the show again, Lothario. He says, is Lothario a celebrity or something, or did I miss something?
Yeah, you didn't miss anything.
Lothario, did you need me to repeat that question for you?
Sure, go ahead.
All right. President Trump encouraged his supporters to come to Washington for a Save America March, the same day Congress would be convened to declare Joseph R. Biden ceremonially the 46th President of the United States. He told his followers big protests in D.C. on January 6th. Trump tweeted a week before Christmas, "Be there, will be wild." In your opinion, do you think that was incendiary?
Yes, not just that statement itself. It's a culmination of a whole bunch of statements ever since the election took place, way before then. He's always been inflammatory by nature. He likes to win. He's a narcissist in every sense of the word. He's got that disorder. He wants to be a god, in my personal opinion. He wants to be a world leader. You were talking about Mussolini, Hitler. You were talking about some people who, in my personal opinion, he would like to be a dictator. And so, a lot of other folks do not believe that, Trump supporters, but that's just my personal opinion. He knew what he was doing. These are his people, his supporters. He's always bragging about, how these are my people, how they love me. He knows, how to stoke the fires of racial divide, political divide. And whether or not, the only point I'm trying to figure out is, does he believe in his own mind that the election was really stolen? Because I think to some no small part, I think the man may be a little sick in the head. I don't think he's clear. There may be some dementia going on. His behavior is not typical of a United States president, but it is typical of a dictator who does not get their way. I think he knew exactly what he was doing, and he got the result that he yearned for.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. I do so agree. I agree with you and Brother Dan. The second question is, President Trump on many occasions addressed the mob as patriots. There was fecal matter as well as urine found in the halls of the Capitol building. There is a picture of a man urinating on the walls of the Capitol building under a Trump for President sign. Is there anything patriotic about that?
Not patriotic, but if you look at America right now, it's a reflection of a large number of people. Of course, not all, but more than what you suspect. I mean, if you look at his resume the last 4 years as president, the things have been said, the things have been done, even the things when he was just running in the 2016 elections. And there's a strong segment of people in this country who said, that's our leadership, that's what we want America to be. And it's either that or nothing. So they're not patriots, they're patriots for Trump and whatever Trump represents. Remember, and as far as with Trump, I do agree that he has mental issues, and that's why I don't jump on him. But the fact that someone who says these things and people still promote him, it says more about what mental issues are out there in society. For instance, we talk about Kanye West, another candidate in the most recent presidential election, but he came out and admitted, he said, look, I am bipolar. And if you read or study that, that's a serious condition. And that's something you have to battle with. Him and his family, they have to wrestle with that. But the fact is, he said that, and that's what's guiding his emotions, are when he has these moments where he just talks and says some of the most off the wall things. But people say, you know what, Kanye's got a point and whatnot. He's telling you he has a mental illness, but people are still considering what he has to say from a logical standpoint. It could be coming from a place of mania. So my thing is, if he's admitting that, he has enough self-awareness to admit that. Do people have enough self-awareness to admit that I'm following someone who has admitted mental problems and I'm adopting their ideas and their statements as if this is just pure truth? So that's what's once again going on with Trump. It's one thing for the man to be narcissistic and think he's a god, but when other people start buying in and treating him as such, the ones who said, I'll die for you when he was in the hospital, fighting COVID and all these other things. So this is much, much deeper than that. And the fact is, merger politics, it's once again a strong mirror to this country, at least a segment of it. And it can't be ignored or pushed away. This is just what it is, a strong reflection of where a large segment of our country is gone. They're deep in that well. I don't know if there's any coming back.
Thank you, sir. Before you go, Junior Duncan said facts, brother. So Junior Duncan agrees with you. Alpha male lone wolf. President Trump on many occasions addressed the mob as patriots. There was fecal matter as well as urine found in the halls of the Capitol building. There's a picture of a man urinating on the walls of the Capitol building under a Trump for President sign. Is there anything patriotic about that?
I've said it once, said it a million times. Perspective belongs to the individual. So if you're coming from a point of view that the election was stolen, there's no credible evidence, but evidence is sometimes whatever you want it to be. So, propaganda starts with lies. It starts with misinformations, untruths, half lies. If you believe this to be true and you stoke that division, then if the president, now keep in mind, this is not me, you, or somebody else who's just a regular person, not even a celebrity. The president of the United States says, we're going to go to Washington. He knows his people. He knows that there's a lot of emotions here. These people are cut from the same vein. A lot of the people that came over here, off the Pilgrim and decided that, hey, we're going to take over this country. This is our country at all costs. And democracy only means how we see it. So, I find it hypocritical when you have a president who earlier in the year or a year or 2 years ago, however long, with the Colin Kaepernick, he calls that unpatriotic. And here we have a peaceful protest. And then you have his people, who are using the U.S. flag to barricade and ram the U.S. Capitol. The U.S. Capitol, it was picked out for a reason. It was planned for a reason. This is not happenstance. This isn't down at the Piggly Wiggly. This isn't down at, some other random place. This is the United States Capitol, the seat of democracy, supposedly. But once again, it's democracy how they see it. So it's a patriotic move if you are on that side that believes the election was stolen. And Trump, no doubt in my mind, instigated that whole event.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate that. Dan, there were heavily armed men that entered the Capitol building basically unabated. This could have ended badly. What does that say about white privilege?
Well, it says tons of things. Well, ultimately, just to begin with, as far as these militias that have been building up steam for quite some time, especially, I would say when Trump got elected, but truth be told, this started when Obama was elected. There were a lot of people who were hurt between 2000, 2008, between what happened with our economy, between just 9/11, getting into wars that we were going to find it very difficult to get out of, and everything that led up to it. But at the same time, I think there were a lot of people who just said, well, at least W's in the White House. And the fact that America got saved by a black man, I just feel like there's a good number of people who just couldn't handle that. And so we remember when Obama won his election in 2008, the server for whatever website handled the Ku Klux Klan and its registration, the server broke that night because they had so many people looking to join. And remember, that's when the Tea Party came about. And that's when Trump started tweeting about birther and is this real and whatnot. It was the first time people just started denying facts. I knew we were in trouble in 2009 or 10 when there was a report it was a survey done in North Carolina where people said, half of the people polled said they didn't believe that Obama was a U.S. citizen. And even when they were told that he was born in Hawaii, half of those people said Hawaii is not a U.S. state. That stuck with me because that was the first time I said, if this is a poll and this is accurate, that means that people are starting to create their own realities. So if you wave an American flag with 50 stars and you tell me what that, if it doesn't stand for Hawaii, what does that star represent? Did they do it just to pick an even number, or what are we doing now? What is this here? All the military bases we have on Hawaii, what are we trying to represent here? What are we saying? But it's ultimately they're saying whatever it is that they want to say. It's just getting to the point between that, the flat Earth society, and all these other things is that I'll create my own reality and the world will adjust to it, or they won't. And the thing is, to a certain degree, you have to have your own reality about yourself. But there's a reality out there that if you just ignore or create your own, then you're stepping into fantasy, and then you're stepping into the dangers that we see this past week, where people like that, they call themselves patriots, or that is the American way. But one last point to this and about your question and everything else. But ultimately, as far as this, we have to remember this feels normal to a lot of people as well, because this is how America was founded. And this is one of the things that we celebrated. We celebrated being rebels and becoming what we have become. But there was always that little underline within our history, depending on who you're speaking to, about how that was celebrated. We were always talking about that and saying that, hey, every now and then you have to, fight, give me liberty or give me death. And there are some people that, even though we're this shining city on the hill and all these other terms they give us, they're still saying these like, don't tread on me. Who's treading on you? We're free, right? We're free, right? We have freedom, but who's treading on you? Don't impede me. Who's holding you back? You had slaves for 400 years as America. This country is built off of free labor, and now we're still the global economy looks at it's us as our economy. And even though we're in whatever record for education, all these other important things. So, what is going on? People are creating their own reality, and we're seeing the devastating results of that.
Thank you, brother. Absolutely. Alpha Lone Male Wolf, there were heavily armed men that entered the Capitol building, basically unabated. This could have ended badly. What does that say about white privilege?
It says that they were able to enter a sacred United States establishment, like the seat of democracy, in a very threatening manner and not get killed, where somebody that looked like me would have. If this had been a Black Lives Movement matter, and there you saw the post on January 6th where it showed the difference in preparation, security preparation. Black Lives Matter came on, and this country has always felt threatened by a resistant Black population. And so, and I don't want to paint everybody in the same broad picture, because I know there's many, outside of the Black race that want democracy, want people to get along. And they're probably Trump supporters. No, there's no probably about it. There are Trump supporters who would like the races to come together. But there's also a segment that are nationalists, supremacists, and stone cold racists. And he has been a lightning rod because of this. So he called them patriots, even though they've broken many laws, and hopefully they'll be prosecuted to the fullest. But had it been another race, whatever race, there would have been way more bloodshed. It's almost like the United States Capitol Police went out their way to minimize blood loss. And I'm not sure that advantage would have been held for other races.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have Kathy Cooper, a soldier, chiming in. She says that's sad for 2021. Donna Simpson, our classmate, she says from class of 86, Berkeley High School. She says Trump has tapped into the deep-seated feelings of some that has been there all along, like you said earlier, Dan, and Lothario's been saying, against their own best interest. They follow him because of a false sense of superiority. He cares about no one. Absolutely, Don. I do so agree. Darnell Murray says, "Hey, Cornell. Hey, Darnell. Good to have you on the broadcast." And Donna Simpson says, "No doubt. Absolutely. Absolutely. She agrees with you, Lothario and Dan. Um, Dan, on social media, I've become privy to some grade school educators who are comfortable with the racial overtones and embrace the ideology of Donald Trump. In your opinion, can someone objectionably be trusted with the gray matter of children of color in a classroom setting?"
Trusted? No. Does it mean that they can teach them? Yeah, because ultimately, here's the thing. You're not able to avoid this. This is something that you're going to have to fight in America and really across the globe. And I think it's if an environment gets toxic to the point that you can't handle it, that's one thing. That's one thing. Like you don't subject yourself to just outright disgust or disrespect and say that, well, that's just the way the world is. But there's a line where certain people won't cross. Well, they may feel or even agree with that, but they'll say to themselves, I still have a mortgage to pay. I still have society to deal with. And the thing is, ultimately, I can deal with that. At some point, it may seep through within their personality and you'll hear it and know it, but they'll know what they can and can't get away with. And they might not have that superiority complex that was mentioned in the comment a minute ago. So they'll just be like, hey, if I want to keep the American lifestyle that I say I love so much, I have to play ball a little bit and I won't be quiet. I can't do what Trump does and keep that position or teach or whatever. Or I still have this interest. So that's inescapable. You're going to come across people who have, there's going to be certain views we just don't disagree with, but we might find horribly disgusting and you might not even know. But the thing is, when you come across that, how do you respond or deal with it? Because to just feel like you can evade it, or if I stay on this part of town, or if I go to this school, it's not always just going to be the case. One day you're going to have to fight that fight or deal with that discomfort. The biggest thing we need to do, though, is make sure our children are ready for it. And they have to understand at an early age, there's going to be people who are scared of them, even in kindergarten, especially with our boys. So I feel like you just can't conceal it when kids come into school. And there are certain things that I can even recall, being young and not understanding it at the time. I remember when Ronald Reagan would come on TV back in the 80s and Nancy was saying, just say no. And I didn't understand everything about politics, but I do remember my father taking me to see Jesse Jackson when he was running for president. So seeing Ronald Reagan speak, and my teacher was so enamored, and she found out that my father took me out of school one day. It's like, to see Jesse Jackson. She was like, he took you out of school for that? And I wasn't thinking much of it at the time. I'm 6 or 7 years old. But then when you think about that tone, you're like, wait a minute. So there's no way it can be completely hidden, but it's something you're going to have to deal with and overcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, brother. Alpha Lone Male Wolf. On social media, I've become privy to some grade school educators who are comfortable with the racial overtones and embrace the ideology of Donald Trump. In your opinion, can someone objectionably be trusted with the gray matter of children of color in a classroom setting?
It's unavoidable. So what you do as a parent, in my opinion, is, you can't get around it. We're a minority in this. So a lot of the educators, a lot of the programs have a Eurocentric point of view, and it's going to be taught by that. If you go to public school, that's just the case of it. In their eyes, they come close to telling the truth, or it is their truth, or it is their truth. I think you have to combat that by, being an educator as well. So they get that point of view, but when they come home, they get your point of view. It takes a village to raise a child, and so you make them see it from You know, okay, that's what you learn. You know, George Washington cut down a cherry tree. But let me also tell you about George Washington. Let me tell you about his slave history. Let me tell you how he used to go. And when the slave would run away, he would go on the personal hunts, you know, to bring back, you know, that tortured soul. So you also give it a perspective from an African American point of view. And then that's how you kind of balance, you know, not to say that these people are completely trying to brainwash you, but in a sense they are. You know, when you dispel all other accounts of a story, that's a problem for me, especially with history. History, like I've said before, his story doesn't necessarily make it true or even factual. It's the version that is being taught over and over and over. And a lot of times, so the victors go to spoil, so they glamorize their sins and their atrocities. You know, give me liberty, give me death. When, you know, another point of view, what made you just came over here, robbed, raped, and pillaged. You know, took the land, and you started it from there with the help of some enslaved folks. So you got to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, complete truth. And that's how they balance, you know, with that version to your version. You know, only God knows what is right. But I have a way of looking at it. You know, like I always say, a lot of times American heroes, all American heroes aren't my heroes. Not even remotely close.
Absolutely. I agree with you on that, brother. Absolutely. Laverne Cords, it chimes in. And how you doing, Laverne? Glad to have you on the show. She says, unfortunately, classrooms are the breeding grounds of the microaggressions that we see in society as a whole.
Absolutely.
Ooh, that's deep.
Oh yeah.
That's deep. That's deep. Yes, sir. That's true, Laverne. That's true. Absolutely true. So now, Dan, what is different all of a sudden that voting, which has been at the epicenter of our democratic system, now all of a sudden is not working?
Because we weren't supposed to be able to vote. And that's why. The thing is, going back to the beginning is always so important, because there's keys there. And the thing is, you have to understand psychology, you have to understand subconscious thinking, you have to understand how programming works. It happens through stories, it happens through pictures, it happens through how it's taught, how it's presented to us. You know, and I used to underestimate that. I used to think it's just a song, it's just a movie. You know, it's not like I'm going to see Rambo and go out and start war. But at the same time, I could think of two examples just about how these images and how they can control people. Number one, Birth of a Nation resurrected the Ku Klux Klan within America. When it looked like it was kind of dying out, they were getting separated. That got everybody riled back up, sort of the same way we've seen with Trump these last 4 years. And then it was riding high again, and the Ku Klux Klan, they had a revival. And then just number two, there was a made for TV movie in the 1980s about the threat of nuclear holocaust, and you know, the atomic bombs, the Cold War, everything else going on. And when Reagan saw this movie, President Reagan at the time saw this movie, he got so paranoid and said, "That's not going to happen on my watch." He invested all this money into the Star Wars program to shoot down nuclear missiles from Russia, and all that money that went to this program to fight a war that never occurred, or you know, they couldn't go to the table and talk about. All that money came from a lot of the inner city school programs and assistance programs, and it had a huge impact on America. And the way that they saw to make that money back was through putting us in prison. You know, having the drug trade, having that to fuel that. I mean, like, we need weapons. If we can't fight Russia, we need weapons to fight the drug war. All these things started from just two movies creating a sense of fear or paranoia in people, and it affected people in power, and it led to the legislation, and we see the long-term effects. So I've just pointed all that out just to say this. When these things happen, as simple as the way that how it's presented, or these stories, or whatever the case may be, how it's given to us, it was always trying to, as Lothario was trying to point out, is always trying to make it seem like it's heroic and everything that we do is manifest destiny. This is the way of the country. Well, we had a politician during the election season who, I forgot who it was, but he came right out and said slavery was a necessary evil for this country to exist.
Yeah.
And the thing is, there's nothing but people, if he looks at history, if you look at the books and you accept all that stuff, and even if you question it, for us to have the country we have now, you would have to consider that to be a true fact. But they're not, if you have to look at the pain and the consequences and everything else as a result of it. But, that's how people are thinking. If they're that brash and brave enough and bold enough to say that and admit that, then, that's what the country is, and that's how they tried to paint it. But the truth is coming out. But now at this point, it's hurting so much and it feels different because the truth is coming out to a point where you cannot deny it. And it almost costs the heart of what this country was supposed to represent. It's democracy in the capital.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Alpha male, lone wolf, Laterio Vanish. What is different all of a sudden that voting, which has been at the epicenter of our democratic system, now all of a sudden is not working?
Voting has always been a way for the common man to express what he wants. Supposedly, this is a democracy. I know it's a republic, but the common man can vote and he can influence. There's power in the numbers, there's power in the masses. So what has changed is that when you don't want a people to express themselves, then you take away their right to freedom of speech and their right to vote. So that's always been a fundamental flaw in the treatment of African Americans. So what I find it really ironic is that you have this process of there's so much fraud in mail-in ballots, and who utilized mail-in ballots a lot during this 2020 election? The Black community. So now it's a problem. Now it's fraudulent. Now there's a wide fraud information out there. And that was one of the lies that he just made up. And he made it up. There's no evidence of it. Even some of, he went through the trials of litigation, lost all of those. And some of the people that he appointed said this is basically hogwash. But guess what? There's always going to be that segment of the population that is happy to eat whatever he feeds them. And when it's this type of information, it can be quite harmful. This man is accused of trying to overturn a democratic process. And that's why they went to the seat of democracy, the Washington, D.C., and the Capitol. And they came from all across the United States. And so there is no one speech. It's a culmination of many speeches over a period of time. It's a reflection of this president's character, of what he believes. Donald Trump is sly, all right? And so he puts around good people around him that can forecast things that perhaps he can't. That's how he knew to go after Hunter Biden, because Joe Biden, he knew, was the only person that had a chance of beating him. So he knows this before it's coming, and so even though the election is skewed for a person like him with the Electoral College, so it's not a true reflection of democracy, in my opinion, he still can't accept defeat. Because in the back of his mind, he wants to be a world ruler. When Trump, way back in 2012, and when he won in 2016, Trump campaigned on term limits. Had Trump won this election in 2020, he'd try to run again in 2024 because the laws don't apply to him.
Exactly.
I agree with you. Absolutely. Very good point. Very good point, brother. Going back to the education segment, when we talked about trusting those teachers with the gray matter, Donna Simpson, our classmate, says exactly, as an educator for 27 years, it's a fine line in education when social issues and injustices arise and how you deal with them. I've found that some educators of other ethnicities and similar are not vested into the total education of our children. There are personal biases that arise either consciously or subconsciously. I encourage parents to instill values and beliefs in your children so that when they are faced with such biases, they have a foundation in which to gauge information. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's right.
She said it
Wow.
way better than I did.
Strong
Wow.
points.
Wow. That's a strong point right there. Woo.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. Very strong point. Thank you very much, Donna. That we appreciate that point. All right. And so we've been talking. You guys been, I think you guys are so good, man, that you peeped my hand, but you guys been hitting this question already, but we're gonna go ahead and ask it. Mary Trump, Mary Trump, a clinical psychologist and niece of President Donald Trump, speaks of her uncle's psychosis, his mental disorder, impairing his thoughts and emotions, making him lose contact with external reality. Mary Trump says her uncle, since being a child, has never been able to process being in a losing position. In her family, Mary Trump says being a loser was the worst thing. My question is, are we really witnessing mental instability and lost contact with external reality more so than defense of an election that has been tampered with?
We are witnessing mental decay. We are witnessing that, but it's just tied into everything else because it's becoming, in a sense, it's becoming almost normal in America. That's why I said that when you have a man with his position who obviously is narcissistic, obviously is not buying into reality, and then people start to buy into that, then you have to question, how are we all doing? We're seeing that, especially after this past year. The cracks are starting to show. They've been there for a long time, but you have to think, especially within this quarantine, you have a lot of people who weren't able to get the medicine they needed from certain doctors' offices as easily. A lot of programs are out there to assist people who have mental issues. They're losing funding. There's a lot of programs that were helping these people. They can't meet up in person. So you just have a lot of people who have different issues. And there's just a lot of people who are angry or hurt from whatever reason. And then you have someone like Trump who just says, no matter what, I'll create my own reality. And they say, well, if he can do it, I wonder if I can. And these are the type of people who can start to buy into these type things. And the thing is, if you think about it just in your own life, you've seen it play out where if either it's a bully or someone in an abusive relationship, someone comes along and they could be a sick individual, but if they can offer some type of a piece or just an answer, a proposed answer to whatever problem they're facing, and it gives that person something they can latch on. They might be a victim of, once again, mental issues, health issues, societal issues, whatever the case may be. But if they can, Trump or someone similar gives them something they can latch onto and feel confident or better within that, then they'll take that up as their flag. And then they feel relevance at that point. So I mean that all human beings have an inner drive to feel, belongingness, purpose, all these other things, regardless of whether it's real or how crazy it is or how destructive it is, still becomes their cause. So yes, it is craziness. It is mental degradation, and in my opinion, but ultimately, with it's taking so many people down with it, it's become almost like a mental crisis. That's also the pandemic that we're in as well too. So that's my thoughts on that one.
Thank you, brother.
Mm-hmm.
Alpha male lone wolf. Mary Trump says her uncle, since being a child, has never been able to process being in a losing position. In her family, Mary Trump says being a loser was the worst thing. My question is, are we really witnessing mental instability and lost contact with external reality more so than defense of an election that has been tampered with?
The election, in my opinion, was not tampered with. Like I said, there's no evidence of that. So the only tampering is the meddling that Donald Trump has been doing, getting these people to do his will. Trump, and we're not just talking about the mob, but he's gone to countless other. He's pretty much used all venues in order to overturn the election, and for some reason he can't understand no. So when you win, then you're called a hero. When you lose, a lot of times people question your mental stability. Now he's been groomed this way, so losing is a part of life. I think you have to teach your children that, hey, you're not going to win all the time. Trump has always had a silver spoon. And so he was built to succeed. And to some degree, he has. I am not a Trump fan, but the people that love him, they'll vote, they'll look at it, well, he was tough over US. He put America first. He, shrunk the trade gap between China. He's let they have a number of talking points. So to them, he's a hero. There's also that segment of people that felt this country was being lost. They saw that the country is browning. All of a sudden, here you got a black president. And like Dan said earlier, that struck a nerve in a lot of people. So that type of hate, it was simmering. And here comes his voice, a voice out the wilderness, and saying all the things that I can wish I could say, and claiming it, speaking it, getting away with it, all to the point where he got to be president of the United States. And he didn't stop there. He kept on going. His unconventional way, to me, is irrational, but guess what? It worked. So you can't rationalize the irrational. You can't make sense of it, but it also leads that, hey, this man ascended to United States presidency, and he was voted in. Millions of people voted for him the first time around. And even in a loss, 74 million people talked to him. And guess what? They're not going anywhere. So perhaps he's not going to be around in 2021, or maybe he'll not be able to run in 2024. But that sentiment, it's still going to be there, and there's a dangerous element to it. Mm-hmm. Washington D.C. is it's like Beirut. It is under so much police security, FBI security. It's like breaking into Fort Knox. I'm not worried about the inauguration day. I'm worried about random events elsewhere, and over the next upcoming months.
Yeah, they're saying for any type of inauguration, even on the state level, when they do state legislators and governors and so on, that they have to be on high alert at this point.
And you know what, Dan, and Cornell, I also want the Trump supporters who believe in the U.S. Democracy. I would love to see them stand up and denounce these people. Sometimes I'll watch Fox News because I like to get a different perspective, and I can't watch it for too long because it doesn't align with me. But at the same time, it still could be a good venue, because what these people are doing is they're challenging democracy. We don't like the results, so we're going to strong arm our way, or attempt to. And to me, if you really believe in the Constitution, this beautiful piece of paper that in at least ideology is sounds wonderful. If you really believe in that, then when you have insurrections, you go ahead and you quash them. You squash them. If that had been Black Lives Matter, or perhaps Hispanics, raiding on the U.S. Capitol, I think we'd have seen a lot more bloodshed.
Absolutely. I agree, brother. I agree. Monica Nixon is watching. Monica Nixon says that they enable him. Mm-hmm. And Terry Moultrie is watching, and she says hi. How you doing, Terry? Good to have you watching tonight. I tell you guys are prophets, because the next question, and I wanted to go back to this question because I remembered this, and I thought it tickled me a bit. And 20,000, and the first part didn't tickle me, but there's a part in here, and you guys will remember. 20,000 armed National Guardsmen will be dispatched for the presidential inauguration. They're sleeping in the Capitol building first time since the Civil War, and Vice President Mike Pence made the call for them on January 6th. Already viewed as a traitor, and was it self-preservation that prompted him to call? If you guys remember, in a show that you gentlemen appeared on, we discussed the vice presidential debate where VP Pence told then Senator Kamala Harris that he trusts the system. My question is, what has happened to the system for VP Mike Pence now?
Well, whether it be Pence or there was footage of, I think I sent in our group chat, Lindsey Graham getting chased in a subway by the Trump supporters. But the thing is, you know, you play with fire, you're going to get burned. And if you're not gung-ho as those people are, and you wanted to use that to your own personal gain, well, then you have your own worries. Because the thing is, you tried to play with that beast until it was all good for you, and then now you can't control it. You know, it's the equivalent like those movies if they have a monster like Godzilla or Jurassic Park, or like, well, we can use the dinosaurs in war, and then all of a sudden they think, well, we can control this animal, and then lo and behold, it always gets out of their control and wreaks complete havoc. And now that's happening here. They knew how the story ends, because you had a lot of people who were trying to fight Trump in the early stages of 2016. Then they bought right on in if they thought he could get them elected. And Lindsey Graham sadly was one of them. Someone who used to be reasonable on the Republican side just went gung-ho and followed him. And now there might not be any coming back, because those people who supported Trump, now they're going back against him. We don't know if it'll stop or what'll happen or where it'll go, but whether it be Graham, Pence, anything, this is the monster that was made. That's why people have that phrase, America eats us young, because you have people out there who are capable of this type of behavior. So when you know what type of animal you're dealing with, you should know the consequences if you don't ride all the way through. So now we just have to deal.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. We remember when then Senator Kamala Harris and Mike Pence were debating, and Mike Pence says he trusts the system. And my question to you, Alpha Male Lone Wolf, is what has happened to the system for VP Mike Pence now?
Well, I think Mike Pence saw the writing on the wall. There's a point. This behavior is not going to be like people saw it for what it was. So to me, there's no fine line. You either agree with it or you disagree with it. And the majority of Republicans, the majority of Americans disagree with it. So the process has to go on. And to his credit, even at the ire of Donald Trump, he still went and certified those electoral college votes, which was symbolic. Trump sent misinformation saying that he shouldn't certify them, as if that was going to stop the process. And it wasn't. And so he tells his people this lies after lies after lies, and they eat it up. So, karma is kind of coming back. These people enabled him. The senators, the people who stood up to him, they're no longer around him. So you had a lot of people who behaved like lapdogs. Our senator, Lindsey Graham, he couldn't stand Trump, and now they were best friends during his tenure. To me, that has always been crazy, about United States politics. And you see it on both sides. During the primaries, there's so much venom, and then supposedly one person wins and everybody just falls in line. Nah, they never really do. But they were afraid of him. They were afraid because, to me, a lot of these senators are about self-preservation. So, maybe to some point you're supposed to represent the will of your people who you represent, your constituents. But then there comes a point where you have to do what is the right thing. So supposedly the U.S. democracy is bigger than any one person. And so I think that's why he, ultimately did what his job detailed. But the cat has been let out the bag. And like I said, you have this racial divide, this political divide, this social divide that's not going anywhere when Donald Trump leaves office.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much. Donna Simpson chimes in. She says, he has emboldened people. his followers. They believe in the Constitution until they realize what's in it. It doesn't support or align with his foolishness.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 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 Dan, the Associated Press has confirmed that the people that stormed the Capitol building were longtime Trump supporters, including Republican Party officials, GOP political donors, far right militants, white supremacists, off duty police officers, convicted criminals, and members of the military. With so many of these people in key decision making roles in our society, like off duty police officers and members of the military, how do you personally feel about this motley crew of insurrectionists? Can people of color get a fair shake?
It didn't feel new. I mean, this has been our story, and when way before me. I'm just, if you pay attention, this is just nothing new. I remember when Rodney King incident happened, and they found that there were Ku Klux Klan applications being sent throughout LA police departments at their stations. Even with our history here in Charleston, the first police department, or the Citadel as we know it, just reminding people just where the old Citadel used to be, and now it's the Embassy Suites Hotel, and then you have the Meeting Street Park area right in front of it. That park is in the shape of a Confederate flag, and that's where original Citadel was. And it was in response to the Nat Turner slave killings, and it came full circle because we know that Mother Emanuel Church is right next to this same Marion Square. And we just got that statue of Francis Marion removed this past summer. But once again, that park is shaped in the shape of a Confederate flag. And we know that that was the history of it. That's why I didn't even feel comfortable when they had the peace rallies there. You're having a peace rally on a Confederate flag that was at that time was supporting free labor through the horrible transatlantic slave trade, which is different from slavery in other parts of the world. That slavery was more of a feudal worker. You don't have workers' rights, but you can go home to your family for the most part. You don't have to worry about your wife getting raped and your kids taken away at any given time and demeaned just to keep you at less than an animal. That was different from anywhere else in the world. So with all those things that have been happening, that's how it started a lot of police forces. That's why we weren't allowed to read and kept out of schools. That's why they didn't want us to vote or be involved in politics. So as we fought and made any progress in this country, we always had to fight against the grain, against these people who were hidden here and plotted out there. And, my grandfather going to the Korean War, he wonders how many, he had to worry about the enemy that they were fighting, and that the enemy that might have been right around them, we probably didn't want him serving in the same unit as them. So it's just nothing new if you really think about it, but it's just becoming more on display. But my biggest thing is just for people to just admit it. You see it, just admit it. We can't fix anything until we at least admit it and recognize it. But it didn't feel different. It's what we've been going through.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you very much.
Definitely.
Very much.
We talked about this before, Cornell. This country was built on racism, and even before Black Americans, I call us the displaced Africans. Even before we came over here, we had the racism and the eradication of the Native Americans. So it has always been a facet of every part of society. Systematic racism is a set of rules, laws that prohibit a certain people rights to a certain people. That Constitution was the biggest hypocrisy, ever made when it was first ratified, because it did not cover the majority of its people, not just Black or Hispanics or minorities, but females. Because this country was never meant for us. So it's the same thing over and over again in a different form, well, I won't even say a different form, a different year. I believe that one day when you and I and Dan will all be long gone, hundreds of years from now, it really won't matter. Race won't be an issue. I believe that, but it won't be anytime soon. It won't be in the next 100 years, 200-300 years maybe. One day it's going to matter, but right now in 2021, it matters. And so, you know, with that birther issue, you just go back to the old playbook. You know, stir up the pot, racial divide will come together. This will be our foundation, and we'll go from there. Now, a lot of times, you know, people, they'll hear me talk and they'll be like, all you talk about is race. Look, that's my perspective. This is how I see things, you know, and those so-called patriots, you know, to me, they're nothing more than a lynch mob mentality. It has always been around, you know, they're not patriots. They're not patriots. And I hope the U.S. judicial system sees them as such, dissidents and insurrectionists. Because that, to me, that's what they are.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Donna Simpson says it's hard to get that genie back in the bottle. And then Donna Simpson said that goes back to the Jim Crow civil rights era. Donna Simpson chimed in and said, man, I'm loving the knowledge and facts being shared by this panel. You better say so, 100%.
Man, the comments have been on fire, man. I'm learning things from the comments, man.
Hey, the comments are on fire.
The knowledge out there.
Comments on fire. Monica Nixon says to them, it's more than just being a Trump supporter. They are disappointed in all our victories.
That's
so
true.
thank you, Monica. That is true. Absolutely. That is true. We were hoping to have the Georgia boy in here, Cardo, talking about turning Georgia blue. We turned Georgia blue twice, but you know, 3 times really. We turned Georgia blue, but he's not with us tonight. But you know, that's another segment. And so, the Associated Press has confirmed that the people that I think that's the question I just asked, right? Okay, 10-4. Here's the next question. Here's the next question. It has been confirmed, but there is strong evidence that the rioters plan to kill Vice President Mike Pence and key members of the Senate. What kind of mindset, entitlement, or privilege makes an armed citizen armed with automatic weapons, some with zip ties, Molotov cocktails, and lists naming good and bad people, go into the Capitol building? What kind of rationale makes a man feel that he's patriotic? You just answered that question. You answered that question in part, Lothario. But did you guys want to stab it again?
Well, the only thing I have to say with that is that, you know, what kind of privilege? That is the exact definition of privilege. There are people just surprised that somebody got shot by raiding the Capitol. I mean, my thing is, you know, we get shot in cars before we can even get out. Our kids get killed, and people say, well, they should have done this and that when they were just playing alone in the park with a toy, or they were walking back to their father's house after going to a convenience store. They get killed for that, and there's supposed to be some type of protocol for these actions. But then you have the privilege to go up to one of our most secure places in America, but you can walk right in and do what you want and kidnap. And people knew that there was a potential for that. They knew that there was a potential for that. Because my thing is, they were going to make enough noise out there, and they're going to be like, you know what, let's not count. Let's stop the process. So what else is it going to turn into? So it's just the bare definition of privilege in those actions right there. That's what it is.
It almost seems if, you know, and I know there are rumors of it being an inside job, but, you know, here you have all this. This is not like they knew this was coming. And it goes back to that perspective. So had that been a Black Lives Matter marching to the Capitol, just like it was before, the powers that be would have put up security. But for some reason, that wasn't the case. So you let all these people that you know are coming, you know they're coming, you know why they're coming, and you still allow this to happen. Now, to me, that is the definition of privilege.
Thank you, sir.
The back of what Lothario was saying, there's a lot of people, this is just business as usual, or what this should be. When that 17-year-old kid who came down from, I think Chicago, I'm hoping I don't get my place.
Yeah.
Came down to Milwaukee from an hour away and killed those two people and was called a hero and raised a record amount of money in a record amount of time towards his bail, which I think he is actually bailed out now while they await the trial. They said, that's business as usual. He was protecting his country. They're projecting that, they're reinforcing that this should be normal because we weren't supposed to vote. Once again, going back to Trayvon walking home, he should have walked somewhere different. He shouldn't be living in the same neighborhood as some people. We weren't supposed to live in the same neighborhood among them anyway. You see, so that's why I say it's so subconscious that people don't even recognize it. How can a 13-year-old who's unarmed gets killed and people look at it and be like, well, I wonder what he did? He's 13 getting attacked by a grown man. It's like, I wonder what that kid did. And I realize that you're saying that you fear other 13-year-old black boys too. Obviously, if you're wondering what it is that he did or was capable of, he was unarmed and got shot and killed. So ever since that time, I just said, you know what? This is where a lot of people are. They, if they can kill our babies and say, well, our children need to know to do something different. I mean, then we have grown adults going in and wrecking everything that they said that they had love for, die for our country, our patriots, telling BLMs that they should be happy to be in this country. And then they tried to actually take the country over. What else do you need to hear or see?
Absolutely. Donna Simpson says, the fear of becoming the minority. Lord forbid they get treated as they did other minorities.
It's funny Donna says that. I think that's what happened this year. The reason why people didn't like being inside their house, and because everybody was starting to feel how black people felt at some point. They were being told what to do, had to be your rights. It's like, imagine having to go to a water fountain just for your race and you having to take that. People don't like that. It's like, I have to wear a mask. I have the 6 feet. You're close. I can't go into the places I normally go to. Oh, America had, the whole country knew what it felt like. They got the black experience this past year.
Absolutely. And bro, if they was in China, they weren't playing in China. They tell you don't come out the house. You don't come out the house, right? Absolutely.
No.
Absolutely.
You get welded in.
That's right. Donna
they had robots walking the streets, making sure nobody was out there. That thing.
Kathy Cooper had a question, gentlemen. He said, what do you think about black people who are followers of Trump?
Oh, that's what this country can do to you. I'll put it like this. There's, once again, when someone starts to hate themselves, that is another sign of mental illness. And I'm not saying that to say that anybody gets a pass, but there's a lot of things going in there. In other words, if you're wondering why someone would think that way, or if it's someone who's close or loved you, like, how could you support something that doesn't even love or care for you? That means somewhere along that lines, there was hurt or pain or something happened, and there was a hole, and then Trump and his people came along and it filled that gap in their life. It's the same reason why, once again, it's if there's a abusive relationship, and we always wonder whether it's a man or woman or whoever's in, just why would you stay in such a toxic relationship? Why are you calling that love? They hate you. They're hurting you. They're degrading you. They don't like anything about you. Why are you staying in that? But people will stay if this feels like there's some type of need that's being fulfilled. They will stay, and they'll take the pain and discomfort of what they know rather than the uncertainty of being alone and what they don't know. So there's a lot of people who are doing that. There's a lot of black men, if they feel that they're hurt, like, oh, black women don't love me, this, that. I try to hand my brother to say I'm not black enough, this or that. So, but then you come along and there's you just have a lot of anger and rage, and then a Trump person comes along and you say something, you start to click, and then it's easy to roll with that. There's a lot of people out there who are like that, especially the fact that when it comes to elections and voting, a lot of that stuff is emotionally based. People don't know. There's a lot of people out there who don't know all the policies or read every bill. They just know their emotions and how they feel towards it. And then once whatever that feeling it is that they catch on to is usually perpetuated. So as far as those blacks who are following Trump, I think a lot of it is coming from that. In a lot of it happens in society, country, families. we don't know. One last thing, and I'll leave it be. Is with this young generation, it's going to be interesting to see. Have any of you kings seen that clip where there was a mom who was cussing out her son because when he got back in the car and the sister was videotaping this, the younger sister, but he had voted for Kanye and the mom was cussing the son out. Did y'all happen to see that clip? It was something that came out around the election period. And she was like, why the F did you vote for Trump? I told you, I mean, why did you vote for Kanye? I told you this election was too important and this and that. And, you know, the people are putting comments like, yeah, put him in this place and this and that. He has to know how stupid could he be. But the way that she acted, the kid who could have been just like 18 or 19, his first time voting, he said, I'm never doing this again. He said that I'm just done with it. So he already doesn't like voting at this particular point. He wasn't excited about either candidate for whatever his personal reasons were. And instead of having someone who he cared about talk to him about why it was so important again and what's at stake or sticking with him, she could have pushed him away. And if someone comes along and says the right things to him, where do you think he'll end up if he votes again? So that's just an example.
Absolutely. Mayor?
You know, because I've asked some of my friends who, you know, some of my black friends, you know, who voted for Trump, why they've done it. And they've got a myriad of reasons. So I go back and forth with this one guy, highly intelligent, highly articulate. And he looks at it because he feels that the Democratic Party has lied more to the, you know, to Black Americans than the Republican Party. He looks at the Republican Party as, hey, they are who they are. They're racist, you know. So the Democrat, they'll smile in your face and then they'll go behind your back and make these 3 strikes and you're out type of policies that, you know, puts Black men in jail. And there's a whole lot of truth. You know, what I always said, that there's never really been a political party from the origins that have been kind to Black Americans, because you always go back to what's the foundational concept of the building of this country: racism. So it was every single where. You know, Abraham Lincoln, you know, he was a Republican. He freed the slaves, but by no ways was he not a racist. He didn't believe that Blacks should ever intermarry or hold office or have any type of power over white folks. As a matter of fact, he wanted Blacks that were freed from slavery to go back to Africa, because it would insult the people of the South who had to see them and remind them of what they didn't have anymore. So, you know, this country has had a history of victimizing the lowest people, you know, the people who have the least. And once again, that's not everybody. I don't want to paint everybody with a broad brush, but that has at times been the ideology of America. And so you just see it replayed, overplayed, you know, on constant play, continuous play all the times, because you don't never get too far from your roots. You know, like I said, 500 years from now, 600 years from now, it might not matter. Today, it still matters. Not like it used to, but there's still residual effect.
Absolutely, brother. You're right. And I'm just going to, this was going to be a question, but I'm just going to go ahead and tell you this. The Times of Israel newspaper reported that 2 Capitol Police were suspended. One posed for a selfie with a rioter, and the other wore a Make America Great Again hat and directed the pro-Trump mob around the White House. 10 other Capitol officers are being investigated. We also note there was another woman on a megaphone calling the plays for the mob and telling them where to go. So, you know, that's just to back up what you were talking about earlier, Lothario, about an inside job. And so, you know, it's a lot deeper, but don't worry, the Fed is on it. So the Fed's on it, and they've made a lot of arrests, and I hope they make a lot more arrests. Donna Boston said, "Ooh, we nailed it." When you guys were talking earlier, and Monica Nixon and Kathy Cooper gave you guys the thumb up for her question. Monica Nixon wants to know, why is Tim Scott so supportive of Donald Trump?
He is who he is. I'll leave that alone right there. He is who he is, and you know There's not much else to say there.
Theory, your sentiments exactly.
Hey, Tim Scott, it's rumored that he still does a lot for the Black community. Conservative, some of the aspects that they attribute to conservative party. I mean, Black Americans have always had that. We've always been a very zealous when it comes to religion. So, to me, true evangelicals, you know what I'm saying? In the sense of just like, followers of Christ. So when somebody usually talks about evangelical and they're talking about politics, they look at it as a voting bloc for, Trump. And those people make up, they're usually, white folks. But all the attributes and concepts of the Republican Party, many of them, are shared by us. We believe in freedom of speech, the right to bear arms. I live out here in Texas, and there's not too many men here in Texas that don't have a gun, don't own a gun, and probably in South Carolina. So my whole point is that what is at the heart, what is different? We want exactly what you want. And for the people who, and I don't believe, they're the majority of Trump supporters. I don't believe the majority, or I don't believe that a lot of Trump supporters are racist, but they are okay with racist behavior, racist speech. You call countries of color shithole. You call people who kneel for, in protest of police brutality, you call them sons of bitches. But the people who break into a monument, the seat of U.S. democracy, they're called patriots. So there's the thing about Donald Trump is he's shown you who he is. A lot of my friends, they believe that he is who he is. So it's a lot better to deal with him than somebody who's going to smile at your face and maybe, put policy that's going to put you in jail. So in that aspect, I see where they're coming from. But in my opinion, his vile behavior and the fact that he is a magnet for these groups that would do you real harm makes him a very dangerous man. And I don't believe, he will be convicted in the Senate once he is impeached and, they have the vote, because people won't take responsibility. They won't. If that had been Barack Obama done what he did, there's not a senator that would not have convicted and thrown him out. Not one. But you mean to tell me you can't get 17 senators from the other party to vote to kick him out and make sure that he's never a part of a elected official office ever again? So, yeah.
That's deep. That's deep, brother. Donna Simpson says infiltration is real. Demetrius Grant, Reverend Demetrius Grant, a good friend of mine, also served in the Marine Corps. He says we've been taught that we don't have a heaven or hell to put anyone in. And then he says, with that said, I heard someone say this is about Trump. He occupies all the 7 deadly sins.
Dang, it's deep.
All right, Reverend Grant, we appreciate that. Guys, I appreciate y'all so much. I got one last question. I wanted to let everybody know that tonight, I named this segment The Friendly Terrorist for exactly the same reason that Lothario just said about, everybody else doing something, but then, these guys stormed the Capitol building and they're called patriots. And, it was Donald Trump's sentiment towards them at the end. He says, I understand, we love you and you're very special, almost commensurate of there are very good people on both sides from Charlottesville, Virginia. But my question is, in the melee of all this, everything going on, what can be done to somehow bring America back together? Reach the rupture. What can be done to bring America back together, or the United States rather back together again?
That's a loaded question. I don't like to speak negativity or anything else, but it's going to only happen in two ways. The short answer, and it would just be more like a reset than an actual solution. The only thing that would bring America together, and I hate to say it, but it would be something emotional, is like if there was some type of outside terrorist attack on our country, and then the shock and surprise that would get people, I think, to put that hatred we have for each other aside, and then, because we kind of saw that happen in 9/11, even though it kind of made people forget about the elections of 2000 for a second, and people felt united in their grief, their shock, and their pain, and their anger as well too. So when we're unified in that sense, then you kind of saw something like that happen, and that's what usually takes a country to wake up and get unified. Although it's short-lived because it's from a brief emotion, and then when logic starts to settle back, people start to go back to their own routes. Now, the other part of that is for the long-term solution, it's just going to take what Lothario said. It's going to take generations of people just saying, I'm going a separate way from what I see. They say, I don't like this. This is not what I want the country to be. But it's going to be a long haul. It's going to be waiting for new people to be born, people in their old ideologies to actually die out or not get a chance to be spread or passed down, and new thoughts, ideas, and just new revelations to actually have a chance to breathe and take hold and get power and steer this country in a different direction. But that's going to take a whole lot of time. So the long route is for greater change, and it's possible, but it's going to take a long time to stomp this hate out. And the short route I'm not even thinking about, because I don't wish down any country. And why would anybody attack us when we're so good at attacking ourselves right now anyway? So I don't think that's going to happen regardless. But that's what's going to take. It's going to take time, and people just stopping hate within themselves, their family, and then basically changing from the inside out. It's not going to come from the top down or some law or anything else. It's going to come from the people.
Thank you, brother Dan.
Dan, you nailed it. If I'm a terrorist, I let America just go ahead and have her own civil war and let her, crumble from within. America is a country that is, it's the greatest of all things, and also it's the worst of all things. So the only way a country like us topples itself is if it topples itself. So you have civil unrest, you have fighting among themselves. The Civil War was about succeeding away from, it was about slavery, but they were going to succeed away from, the United States. And a country that's divided among itself cannot stand. The only way you bring America back together again is you adhere to the principles and the concepts of the U.S. Constitution. Because on paper, it's a beautiful, beautiful piece of paper. Now, but in practice, it has been horrible. It has been for a segment of people who it was designed for, who are the so-called real citizens of the United States. But minorities of all kind, be them racial, be them female, be them LGBTQ, are tired of playing secondary fiddle. They don't want more. They just want the Constitution as is written, that, is good for you. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So, like Dan was saying, it's going to take time, because listen, you can't change people's minds. You can educate them, but they're going to believe what they're going to believe. And hate is something that is taught. And a lot of times, the only thing that can stop that hate is death. And I don't mean murdering somebody, but they have to die off, And when they're replaced, you try and you work on that generation. And then over time, hopefully we come, because like I said, slavery, it's not that long ago. So we've come a lot of strides, but at the very same time, since it's not that long ago, you still see the effects of systematic racism.
Thank you, brother.
Interesting fact about slavery not being so long ago. I recently saw something that when this is like Sojourner Truth. When Sojourner Truth was 4, I think they said Thomas Jefferson passed away. Of course, the slave owner. So Sojourner Truth, she was 4 when he passed away. And when Sojourner Truth passed away, Ronald Reagan was 4.
Wow.
So it was not that long ago.
No, not at all. Good God. Ooh, you look at it like that.
If you add up the age of Joe Biden and Donald Trump, that's how long ago slavery, I mean, between those two old geezers, I mean, that's about 150 years. And that's about how long, 152, 155, depending on ratification or depending on when slavery actually stops.
Right.
Exactly. But as we know, our home state, our beautiful state of South Carolina has as dark a racial history as not only the United States, but the world. The world.
Thank you, brother. Absolutely. Monica Nixon said, prayerfully, a peaceful transfer of power to begin with. Absolutely, Monica. Donna Simpson says these good old boy mentalities have to die off, as the panelists shared. This was awesome once again. Thank you for tuning in tonight, Donna.
Thank you, Donna.
Demetrius Grant says, in order to heal the country, has to be truthful with itself and recognize that we are never great or even good. We had periods of being okay. We live in a time of people loving to hate and hating to love. Whoa, that's true, brother. Absolutely. Real love must happen. That's what he says. Yeah, that's deep. Right. That's deep. Man, I tell you what, this was an awesome show. And you guys made it awesome. I want to thank Cheryl Morrison, Alexis Smalls, Junior Duncan. I'm laughing at Junior still. Donna Simpson, Darnell Murray, Laverne Cords, Monica Nixon, Terry Moultrie, everybody, Kathy Cooper. We just want to thank you for your participation, Reverend Demetrius Grant, all of you guys for tuning in. And man, definitely Alpha Male Lone Wolf and Dan Mack, who I can always call on to come on the show. Man, Alpha Male Lone Wolf been on 2 shows this week. So man, listen, I appreciate y'all brothers so much. And we just say thank you. And we say to those of you that might be planning to go out to the Capitol for the inauguration, for protest, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Hey, it's still a pandemic out there. It's still a pandemic.
I want to thank Cornell for living his dream. He was definitely, we're going to be watching Cornell one day on cable TV because he's got that personality and that charisma. So yeah, this is a good forum. So hey, I appreciate you realizing your dream and allowing us to be able to speak our minds.
Hey, brother, well, thank you. Listen, when I'm on cable TV, don't worry, you and Dan Mack will be there. And Carter. So Carter, you got time to get ready now. You missed us tonight to be on cable TV with us next time. Laverne Cord says, great show. Kathy Cooper says, great show tonight. You guys make it great. We just thankful to have you guys on there. And once again, we say to you guys, if you're planning to go to the Capitol in protest to the inauguration, don't do it. Think about your families.
Just say no.
Just say no. Don't do it. Think about your families. Think about the life you live. Think about your freedom. Yeah, this ain't what you want. Stay home. Stay home. So we thank all of you tonight for tuning in and to the Moral Compass. Until next time, I'm Cornell Johnson.
Yo, didn't we do that last time? We said we're gonna work on your soundtrack, homie. That's it. Come on, we get some church musicians and get some rhythms going on. We got you, Kim. You're gonna figure something out.
Hey, that's funky, Cornell.
Funky rock. Yeah, man, he could have played Impeach the President. But Impeach the President, Funky President, something.